Yo ho ho. This is the episode that we promised last episode, which is a week later for those watching, but is mere minutes of garbage time.
No wardrobe change or anything.
Nothing.
No.
It's time is you guys we're traveling at light speed and you guys are just there riding your bikes.
I should wear a hat and then I could like change the angle for every video.
I'll just shave part of my beard.
Yeah.
Until I just have a mustache at the end of it all. Yeah.
That would just be very fitting for the times we're in. He's just losing parts of his beard.
just changing it slightly. Get tattoos on my face when it's all said and done.
Oh no.
It's like you guys are trying to. Well, hey everybody, welcome to the Inside Tabletop. I'm back with the infamous Chris, 50% of Chris and Jay from Loads of War Games and Hobbies. I have to get Jay in for one of these at some point. He's so lazy.
Just slacker, that guy.
He's so lazy. It's, you know what it would? It's just because it would be all me talking and him just dead ass.
He's riding the fact that he has the youngest of the kids still, you know? Like he's like,
he's really milking that.
I got the kid's like, Theo's like two, like he's gonna be like 13 next year.
I was gonna say, yeah.
You know? Like
he's in college.
Like, just because he's the youngest.
College, yeah.
Just because he's the youngest,
yeah,
man.
Young is a relative term, Jay. Settle down.
Like he's in daycare now.
He's fucking driving.
Like, come on, man.
That's right. Yeah. He can drive. He's able to use matches. I gave him a whole bag of lighters for his birthday. Yeah, it's gonna be fine. Poor Theo. Getting used as a prop by his dad to avoid working. Well, speaking of cheating the system.
Oh boy.
That's the topic for today's Inside Tabletop. If you were part of last week's, we were talking about the roller coaster reality of on again, off again tariffs, manufacturing, like insanity and escalation. Then I wanted to flip it around to the other side and talk a little bit about what does the market do when this happens? Because this has all happened before and it'll all happen again because time is a flat circle and weird times come and go inside the market. And this is an interesting one to talk to you about as a retailer because sometimes you have to deal with the blowback of this stuff. And specifically, I want to hearken us back to the mid-aughts, an olden time of yesteryear, where for a long time, Wargaming Prices had not caught up with the exchange rate, like changes between Canada and the US.
Right.
And we had a massive sort of like market correction that was driven by the consumers and then had to be dealt with by the market. So one of the interesting things that happens typically when this kind of uncertainty takes place is prices change, but they don't tend to change all the time. You can't do that. And this is the problem with prices changing all the time is stock you ordered last week might now cost more than stock you ordered this week. And you have the same thing on the shelf and your store down the road has it on the shelf for maybe 40% less than what the stuff you ordered 2 weeks ago now is. Well,
exactly. Right. And I think
they can't oscillate the plane.
The bigger the company, generally, the less sort of like volatility you see in prices. Like people don't necessarily know the nitty-gritty of it, but essentially like a company like Games Workshop, they set the prices and then they set the low point for those prices based on the regions they're in. But companies like, you know, Corvus Belli, you know, there were any companies that are like basically working through these distribution models. There's no real price there. So like essentially you're just determining what you think a fair margin is when you sell it.
Yeah.
Right. So you tend to see bigger
timer. Sorry. Keep going.
You tend to see bigger price fluctuations with smaller companies because we're doing like these like kind of small batch orders from our distributors, and then like you get your price sheet and you're like, oh, this set jumped $10. Okay, I have to adjust the price now, but I'm usually restocking it and I'm not like I'm replacing something as opposed to adding to it, right? So and it's not as noticeable. Whereas when GW does their price change, it's like all at once and it's like a big thing, right? So
but then the consumer comes along and they will find ways to try to sidestep, circumvent, and get a deal where there isn't a deal anymore. So whenever prices get out of range and then something changes, like for instance, if all of a sudden US dollar buying power is massively out of proportion with the Canadian currency value, you get cross-border purchasing.
Yep.
Add to that a 30% discount. And they're basically getting like a retailer discount to get product.
You're going to see like, remember when Bernie Sanders used to organize those like insulin trips or whatever, where like you load up a bus of people, drive to Canada, buy insulin, go back across. We're going to have Warhammer buses.
That's it. And this conversation only really applies to Warhammer. This is one of those times where us talking about other products, because the other things impact those products, like even just availability, it doesn't matter what if you just can't get something in a certain country or region anymore, you'll just pay what it costs.
Yeah.
It's rare enough that you're not going to hunt for the best deal because it's not as widely available. So this doesn't really apply to indie games. It only applies to mass market stuff. The bigger the company, the more this is going to apply to them. And what we want to talk about today is our predictions. 3 ways that the customer is probably going to try to sidestep cost increases in this volatile market. And the first one we talked about was border hopping, shopping based off of the currency value.
Well, like you
and
said,
this used to be a lot more
precedent,
common.
right? Like maybe I want to say almost 20 years ago.
Almost 20 years ago, 2005 to 2010, there was a massive amount of Canadian internet retail discounters that were getting a huge amount of cross-border orders, and it was a problem.
Yeah.
Great Canadian Miniatures was 30% off Canadian prices, and US dollar value was so high that was like getting like 60% off your product. Which
so
is
all the especially if you're close to the border, like Detroit stores, they're getting hammered. Hammered.
Absolutely hammered. People were like getting around it by making Canadian, like buying a Canadian PO box and just driving across the border buckle. And stores were making orders like this too. Like there was
That's
people
right. Because at that time you could order.
That's right.
You could order from them. Yeah.
You could order from them at like a bulk amount, and it was just getting fulfilled. And because this had never really happened before, nobody noticed.
There's no policy.
There's no policies in place for it. Nobody really notices for it. It's the only time like online retailing was just becoming a thing.
Yeah.
So nobody knew what to do. And it was a real problem. And that's the first thing that I could see happening, especially if there's like a wide open border thing and you can just go and buy stuff between countries. That is a real possibility that people are going to be deal hunting cross borders back and forth. And there's things you can do about it, but I think it'd be relatively hard to track down if it's not like in the trade terms that you can or can't do it. And
so, yeah, like any web store in Canada would be subject to the terms that GW has in trade, which is you can't sell to American customers. So your website couldn't be set up that way.
So it can't select a destination of
the US. Yeah.
Can you ship to the UK and the EU? If that became,
I don't know. Actually, I've never even thought about that. Yeah,
be curious.
I'm not sure. Yeah,
because like
I was going to add on to that. Like, I don't know that there aren't stores doing it though.
Of course,
you know what I mean.
Like, yeah.
Because like they have some sophisticated mechanisms to catch you, like posting on social media early when you shouldn't be selling Skaven Tide or something early. Yeah. But I don't know what checks and balances they have in place to kind of like catch people.
They would probably have to have either a bot go and do it store by store,
trying to buy it
store by store, or have an employee go and try and do it store by store. Try and place an order.
Exactly.
Because that's how they catch you.
Yeah.
Is they just go, they sit in the US and they order from your store and go like, you were able to ship to store. Is this good faith or bad faith? And then like a strike system or something like that to try and catch you.
Exactly. Yeah.
But again, it doesn't stop opening like for near border shipping. It doesn't stop people opening a PO box. It doesn't stop all kinds of things where it's just like, no, we just went and drove across the border to our PO box and picked it up. And this isn't necessarily retailers doing this; it would be customers. It'd be real easy to do. Just go and get that place to ship it inside of Canada, and then go take advantage of your currency being better. It's like driving across the border to go to the outlets. People do that all the time.
Well, there's a lot of, not to give people ideas here, but there's a lot of sketchy ways to get around it, right? Like if, for example, like you don't ship under your business's name, you ship under a different name.
Yep. Or you just do actual old school mail order,
yep,
where they just call you up and you just mail it. How would they catch you? Right? If you just do like, oh yeah, we do web orders, we do them by phone, or we do them by fax.
Yeah.
Fax machine gets real popular again, and guaranteed someone's going to try and do it. If it gets out of whack one day for like an extended period of time, then someone's going to try and like make this happen, because it will be the new version of offering a 30% internet discount. It'll just be a way of loopholing your way into a level of customer that's deal hunting, because the price points become really painful. It's become too expensive. And people are already talking about how expensive this hobby is, man. You keep stacking numbers on top of it and it could get way out of whack.
The only positive thing I could say about that would be essentially GW, in my opinion, has to be thinking about this US thing, obviously. And like you were mentioning in our last video, how could they not be right now thinking about how to make some things in the US, right? Like to circumvent this, right?
Well, and
so
also
that's going to take time.
Remember, price increases that happen on existing products are the public ones. Workshop replaces their product range through new releases almost every 5 years, right? In 5 years, they could essentially do resculpts of everything, and then it's an invisible price increase.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about Beastmen, right? You just take Beastmen off the range for Age of Sigmar, stick them in blue boxes, 10% price increase across the board. It's the exact same product, and you've just raised the price, but there's no need to announce it. It's just, no, this is what the old world, these are different boxes. This is the old world box. Yeah. They have different bases. There's all these other features. This is why it costs this much. But it's effectively a price increase, right? Yeah. And so whether or not they increase prices, that creep, and then the currency, which they have no control over, is going to be the deciding factor there as to whether or not this kind of behavior starts to emerge. So even if pricing stays the same inside a given market, sometimes the pricing becomes reduced in a like a side-by-side market like ours with the US, simply because of the way that economics work and the dollar values change. So if all of a sudden the US currency is $1.70, if we had it's like the British pound and it's $1.75 Canadian for every dollar US, well, yeah, hell yeah. They'll just get in their cars and drive over here and buy MSRP full price Warhammer. But if they can drive over here and buy 30% off Warhammer at a friendly local game store,
isn't it free? Warhammer's free then.
It's basically free. That's a wild discount. All of a sudden, you get hobby tourism, right? You get your insulin buses, except it's for buying toy soldiers. Yeah. So that was the first one that we came up with. The second one was 3D printer.
Right. So I like to go back to the pandemic period for this, where I think you really saw the first phase for a lot of businesses because of the supply chain disruptions and sort of just like the difficulty of navigating the international trade stuff was getting so much trickier. I wouldn't say a lot of companies, but companies started to look at this sort of this direct consumer model again. Like I know even Games Workshop, for example, that's when they really started to push their web store a lot more.
Yeah.
We saw huge, we lost a lot of stuff to the web store, like direct web store stuff. They really started to push a lot of like the supply there because they were making so much money doing the direct to consumer thing.
And the white boxing became a big thing too.
Huge.
Because they didn't want to wait to order packaging from China. So they have a generic white box and a sticker label, and all of the stuff that went warehouse only and
it's all just
it's all a generic white box and sticker. Because it doesn't need retail packaging. Yeah. And that's a huge cost savings for them. And it's like a shadow rage reduction where you just put it in the warehouse and you sell through it.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think you this is when you started to really see these like direct to consumer 3D printing kind of companies start to make like real inroads with people.
It's real, and I mean, you get asked all the time, when are you going to start your 3D printing farm? When are you going to take this seriously, Chris, and realize that being the manufacturer is
I'm just not a serious person.
You're not a serious person. No, you're not a serious person. You're too deeply involved in unserious topics. But that's that is a real way for some companies to decide stuff and be like, it's just Warhammer, but we print it ourselves, and we package it ourselves, and we buy these STLs from all of these third-party sculptors and designers. Like, this is where Steamforge selling their War Machine STLs and
also 3D printing their own models. So they got to basically become like Games Workshop, where they make their own miniatures.
Yep.
Because they just 3D print them.
That's it.
Yeah.
And they do their starter sets and stuff like that in plastic from China still, but like the vast majority of it, they have this cost control on now. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's still a labor cost, and the machines might get more expensive, and all that stuff can happen. But if you're piping in, like what costs MSRP in a box, let's say it is $130 Primaris Tactical Squad.
Yeah.
And you can sell it for $70 because you 3D printed it and you stuck it in a white box, or even like your own store's cool packaging that you get printed locally somehow, or even just a sticker label on some generic box you get at Staples. Like, that's a real viable option all of a sudden. And I could see that creating another boom of people doing that legally distinct Warhammer. And I really have to question, after having let people get away with it for so long now, what could Games Workshop even do to stop them? There's so many. It would be so hard to stop, and it's such a lucrative deal to sculpt once, sell forever. If you do like a retailer licensing pledge or something like that.
Did you see the Ravaged Star thing at?
I've seen the Ravaged Star. I didn't see the huge booth. Did they really?
They had a massive gaming table.
Yeah.
With their miniatures like painted and spread all over the place. It was kind of nuts or whatever. But like, I mean, that's like just flaunting it right there. Right?
It's just Warhammer miniatures.
They're just Warhammer miniatures. Yep. Like
it's a Chaos Army, a Tyranid Army, and they're just there.
Eldar, whatever. Yeah. No tariffs. Just right to consumer.
Well, no, because all that stuff's printed in like board game plastic.
Is
In
it?
Poland? Yeah.
I thought they did a steel.
No, but it's printed in Poland.
Oh, okay.
It's all manufactured in Poland, I'm
Fair
pretty
enough.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they do some STLs and
probably
stuff
do
as well,
STLs
but
too,
like
yeah.
I know that the Kickstarter was for like board game piece plastic. It was all like vinyl plastic stuff.
Okay.
So it all came pre-assembled into the box, and because a bunch of people painted them, and they did a bunch of like I don't know, celebrity painter, influencer,
Right.
paint the stuff for us. And
You
get the reward is you get the notoriety of having painted the stuff for us.
Yeah, exposure. It's always exposure.
Yeah, paint exposure. Yeah, exactly.
You get UV rays or whatever. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. You get to bask in the gloriousness of our presence.
Yes. For all of us vegans, we get to just absorb
of this extra Warhammer, of the extra Warhammer. So, I mean, and that's a market again. Like that one feels like if there's a double side to it though, because there is some physical product being manufactured in Poland. It's not in China, so it's a little more cost proof. And if it's being manufactured in Poland, again, I don't think there's anyone for them to go after because I don't think they can litigate in Poland. So like they couldn't stop them anyway.
Seem to be, yeah.
Doesn't seem to have stopped it from happening. And then the 3D printer stuff is like that's directing. There's no borders. You know what I mean? It's just, do you want a 3D printer?
Yeah.
Can you get these designs?
Yeah.
And everything from like the one-page rules, fantasy stuff where there's like an equivalent to every army, like the new what is it? Age of Fantasy skirmish box set is basically like Tomb Kings and Lizardmen.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing because, like, give you an example. How much do you want to bet the Seraphine are gonna leave Age of Sigmar at some point?
That would be a real shame because they're one of the more popular armies.
I'm sure. Yeah,
like
yeah.
People love, ironically, people love to play Age of Sigmar with classic Warhammer armies.
They sure do.
They really do. They really do.
Funny.
Yeah.
But seeing the roadmap, and we're getting off topic here, but seeing the roadmap for the old world, it feels like that might be happening at some point soon for a range reduction and just rolling them over into the next 8 releases. Because why would you want to print them in twice in different packaging?
It's true.
Just kill them. Just kill them and get rid of them. And then people can 3D print them.
Not my Seraphon.
Yeah, Seraphon army.
No.
Just put them on square bases. Jay wants you to do an old world army
He
anyway.
does so bad.
Just square base your Seraphon. Just ruin all the paint jobs by ripping them off their bases and then stick them on new bases.
Just rip them off.
Just rip them off the bases. Or just get like bases to sit under your bases. You can do that.
All the little cappy guys. Yeah.
Little copy guys, movement trace.
Yeah.
And then you can play old world like a man.
Like a man.
Go back
with
to it.
Hair on my chest
Jay.
and everything.
That's right. That's right. That's play. You got a pair.
Hair in my chest.
that the new play?
Rage in my heart.
That's right. Can disappoint. I've seen this movie before. You're Dr. Manhattan. It's 2024, and I'm playing Warhammer Fantasy Battle. It's 2014, and I'm playing Warhammer Fantasy Battle.
So much.
It's 2020, and I'm playing Warhammer Fantasy Battle. It's 2025, and I'm playing Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Just sitting on Mars.
Oh my gosh.
Thinking about playing Warhammer Fantasy
I'm so
Battle.
calm right now.
Well, I do think the 3D printer thing is
fun little thing though.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure all 3D printers are made in China for the most part.
Yeah.
So we'll probably see like a big jump in cost on those.
I mean, they're basically cell phone screens that project UV, right? If they're resin, and if they're FDM, they're like they're spraying liquid plastic. So like all of that component technology is typically made in China.
Yeah.
And I mean,
so like a $300-$400 printer could be like $900.
That feels like, so first of all, that feels like a problem for people on ramping into that option. And for the most part, I would imagine if you're in a market that's not subject to that, or you're trying to circumvent it, you're not going to be too worried about those prices going up anyway.
No.
Because the difference is China's never going to raise the prices on those things. They're just going to be impacted by what the local tariff is having them come in and come out.
Yeah.
So like they don't care what you buy them for. They want them in your country. Like it won't be China setting the price of those things is what I'm saying.
No.
They want them out of the factory so they can make more.
That's right. Yeah.
More than anything else. They want them in your home so that you can keep producing things. And the reason why these two options feel viable to me is because it could be lucrative for people.
Mm-hmm.
It can create a gold rush for the STL designers and the manufacturers of these like secondhand market versions of all the models. So you can play with off-brand Warhammer. And then if you want to do like organize these trade things, it's in someone's interest to do like a fax machine phone style ordering thing, because then they can make it up in volume. It's in both, like it is there's money to be made bootlegging. Yeah. And bootlegging that's what we're really talking about here is bootlegging. Bootlegging is a natural customer reaction to a hostile purchasing environment,
Yes.
to an environment where, economically speaking, the product that you're interested in is becoming less and less viable. Bootlegging just happens.
Mhm.
So, what is our third wave of bootlegging that you see happening? Because I can tell one more.
We have a third one?
Yep,
Oh, I thought we were just going to be like, surprise, there's no third one.
you know exactly what it is, because fucking Mitch comes down and buys everybody's used Warhammer to do the aftermarket.
Of course.
And
Yeah,
it's going to be aftermarketing.
yeah.
It's going to be bit swapping and trading. And you're going to see no more cheap Warhammer. Used miniatures are going to become almost full price. That'll be the last
used
thing.
miniatures probably will go up quite a bit.
That'll be the last part of it, is used Warhammer will appreciate in value, because as long as it's still under what they could pay for it now.
So what you're saying is all of us who hoarded plastic, we're all just so much wealthier now.
I mean, maybe it's entirely possible.
These were responsible things to buy.
But we know people whose entire livelihoods are around selling old lead miniatures
Oh yeah.
that they find for dirt cheap places, and they organize and they sell on eBay, or they sell through trading groups. And that's the third pillar of what bootlegging looks like, is people taking what people don't want to either spend the time to get rid of. They'll buy it for pennies on the dollar, and they'll sell it for more. And I do think that that's the last thing that's going to happen, is you'll see another rise of things like trading forums like Bartertown, Facebook Marketplace, except the prices aren't going to be deals anymore. It's going to be what happened to the vintage clothing market. Instagram, if you like fucking old sneakers or clothing or collecting records, Instagram fucking destroyed the vintage market, period.
It became too cool. Yeah.
It became the illusion of cool. Not even cool, but the illusion of cool. There's this is a real thing that my friends who've worked in this industry, or even in the charity industry, have had to deal with, is guys getting part-time jobs at Habitat for Humanity or Value Village, which is one of our thrifting things, but the Salvation Army equivalent, just so they can get first dibs at picking through anything good that comes in, that they can then sell for more on the
basically
aftermarket.
They create another business that's like that.
They create another submarket underneath all that stuff where this shit becomes more valuable, and they go hunting for it and they try and find it. Because what they want to do is they want to find someone who doesn't know what it's worth and doesn't know what the value is of it, grab it for nothing, and then flip it. And flipping with again, if this goes on and there's an uncertainty or price corrections happen, there will be another increase in that secondhand sort of flipping market, that speculators market on miniatures. And then what happens? The thing that everybody complains about, the scalpers, the people who come in and buy 20 of something online, break it up, and then sell the pieces on eBay.
Yep.
That has been a real problem inside of this hobby for a long time.
Scalping's big now. Yeah.
Scalping is a huge thing. Limited editions, especially when companies have a thing where one miniature inside a box is the only way to get it. Right. So take, for example, some of the new army boxes, like the Death Rattle one where there's the knight. That'll probably be the only place you can get that knight for a while. Right. Same with the Vargulf inside the Flesh Eater Courts one.
Right.
It was the only way you get that guy. It was the only way you get that apparent Ghoul King with the wings. He was only in there, and he came out eventually by himself. In that period where they're not available, that's where you buy that box set, you bring him out, and he might be $40 when he comes out by himself, and people are selling for $120, $130 because people want that miniature, but they don't want to buy the big box.
Yeah.
And this is kind of that natural reaction. So border jumping, the proliferation of 3D printing, and what that could mean for secondhand or alternative miniatures, and then that secondary market feel like the kind of stuff that's gonna all just raise back up again as a natural customer reaction to these market actors. So my last question then is, what do you do with that? You're a retailer, man. You're selling things at MSRP. How does that affect you going forward? Because that's a thing that people, man, that's a thing you could imagine some dude in a trench coat and a fedora in your store being like, "Hey man, I got some tactical marines over here. Man, what you need, what you want. Here's my card." He shows up at your gaming night and starts flossing for his secondhand Warhammer market.
Well,
we're talking about his 3D printers, because the 3D printing thing's happened already, and I know it has.
Oh yeah. The used models thing is a very well known good business model. If you have a hobby shop and you have the room to do it, 100% you should be selling used models.
Yeah.
It's just a good business model. It's just like all the card stores that sell singles. It's generally you can get good deals from people because they just want to unload stuff. Sometimes you can get them to unload it for store credit instead of cash, which is
Yep.
even better. Very low risk, and then you can mark it up and then make decent coin on it. I think anyone who has a hobby shop and has the space should totally be doing that. We don't really have the space, so that's not something that we would necessarily be doing. Yeah, I have to say, like, none of those things are good for us.
No,
No,
not really.
none of those things are good for us on the way that we structured our business. The one thing I will say is, for us, luckily, we have hedged mostly towards being like a hobby supply store.
Yeah.
And I think the one
Can't
nice
bootleg
thing,
paints and brushes.
the one nice thing about that stuff is, like, people haven't figured out how to 3D print paint bottles yet with paint inside them. So the Star Trek,
Tea Earl Grey hot.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not there yet.
Yeah, is
so
there replicators?
luckily. So that's where we probably pivot even more into.
But if you were, again, if you were one of these, like, kind of what is it, turnkey retailers who relies on volume and discount and stuff like that, that could be something that's way more impactful to your business, where it's like,
yeah, even just a place that's like, we make most of our money on model kits,
and it could be good or bad, because
Yeah.
like that guy who does 30% off online retailing and just says US customers call us,
maybe, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, and then all of a sudden they can do a US order and they can ship it, nobody catches them. Like,
Maybe
if
they're
you-
close enough to the border, or maybe like
regardless,
whatever. Yeah,
just do it
yeah.
by phone.
Yeah.
Like, if you just do it by phone and ask, like, like the right questions to try and suss out if you're being catfished to see if you're breaking your trade terms, like, that's an opportunity for that side
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
So it's not all doom and gloom. Like, there will be people who try and capitalize on this and try and like make some extra coin off of it. And that cross-border thing right then and there, it's been a problem before. It'll be a problem again. And if currency gets super out of whack, like, I'm guaranteeing it's happening right now in markets all over the world. Like,
Mhm.
I can't remember, is New Zealand the same price? I think New Zealand and Australia have the same GW price.
I think you're right.
Because if they didn't, they would have this
that would
problem.
be, they'd have boats going across.
They would
or whatever,
immediately
yeah.
have this problem. Just immediately. Like instantly have that problem. If you had US prices in New Zealand and Australian prices in Australia,
That's how you get pirates, guys.
that's how you get pirates.
This is how you get
This
pirates.
is what bootlegging is. Literally. It's literally, there would be a guy in a rowboat named Barry, and he would be his cork fucking
Barry.
hat. Baza. He'd be
Barry's a legend.
That's right.
He's a legend,
He's
Barry.
a legend. It's Croggy's a legend. He'd be just like full of sprues, fucking oaring across the gap there for a week at a time, bringing in his cheap Warhammers.
The one I think, like, positive note, not necessarily for me, but at least for the small guy out there who's like still creating things, like, the 3D printer does at least give them some stability going forward.
Sure.
That you could still create like cool indie miniature games, and you're not going to get cut off from your consumers through this stuff. Like, if that's the way you go about things, right?
Yeah, and the consumer could gravitate towards those things too. Not even like we said like imitation mainstream game, but you could just as easily start gravitating towards smaller and independent press things, because they're just not going to have the same cost associated with it anyway. A kitchen table game that needs like a dozen models to play that you can 3D print is going to seem a lot more attractive. And then you have like a potential customer contraction, because that is the final thing we didn't talk about, is people just walking away and not buying as much, or just like putting a pin on their hobby until it seems like it's returned to its like level of sanity that it has before, or interacting with it other ways.
Yeah.
You know what you can't tariff? Digitally downloading Space Marine 2 or Total War 4. You know what I mean? Like, you can't put a tariff on that. I mean, you probably can, but like, it's not going to be the same as goods and materials, right? Like, you'll be able to buy something at whatever the cost is, and then have whatever your enjoyment of playtime is without all the stress and aggravation of worrying about whether or not you had a sound investment or not.
Yeah. Maybe people will paint more of their great pile of shame. It's possible.
In all of my life, that's never happened.
It's not gonna happen.
It's weird that like is always an option.
Yeah.
Of people just of like having restraint in finishing projects.
Not on the table.
And it's never on the table.
Not on the
It's
table.
never anything anyone's ever chosen.
We don't ever go there.
Ever.
Yeah, that's we don't bring that up.
That place is haunted. That is a dark land of vampire ghosts. We will not go there. I feel like that's the kind of like, that's the option that no one's considering, of like, what if you just were moderate in what you did? And you know what? To take the flip side of that too is, in mainstream games, you kind of can't be.
Yeah.
Because your level of being moderate lasts 3 years right now. Like, let's say I bought, and maybe not even then. Let's say I buy into the new edition of Warhammer 40,000. I start a Tyranid army, and I have my Tyranid Codex, and that's it. I got my Tyranid Codex. I'm good for 3 years at least. When that 3 years is over, that book might not be valid anymore. The collection I have might not be valid, and I'm forced to re-engage. And we are kind of in that cyclical loop, you know what I mean, of releases. And it's funny because this came up in a conversation during one of our live shows talking about game balance. We're talking about the comments in game balance, about how competitive gaming influences hobby culture. One of the ways that you never have to worry about perfecting your game is if you just fucking throw the whole thing away every 3 years and start over. And so that like iterative gameplay thing of like, I don't have to perfect Warhammer if I just start it over again, over and over again. Right. That's a way of addressing
Which they've been proven they can get away with.
They can get away with for the last 40 years, right? So like, why not? And the customer reaction to that so far hasn't been to do anything other than just keep buying more of it over and over and over again. No matter how expensive it is. Because I mean, part of your collection carries forward with you.
Well, I mean, we can't say, we can definitely say that it is making people leave, but they are just growing so much that it's unnoticeable. And we did a video about this before, about the Kill Team thing, and why is it booming so much?
Yeah.
I think a game like Kill Team has a lot to, like, it's probably going to be a great game that Games Workshop has that'll save them a lot if prices do push up in the future quite a bit, because it's going to catch the people falling through the cracks.
It is.
Because like, even if a Kill Team breaks $100, you can still make the argument that there's a ton of value there for your time. You can complete the loop.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I think what people have shown to that there's a lot of people that are price sensitive, but like will still stick in the hobby in some way. And it just means that they might downsize what their expectations are for what they can get, right? So maybe they don't collect Warhammer 40,000 armies anymore. They just collect Kill Teams.
Yeah.
Right.
And they sneaky spend the exact same amount of money that they had in their budget anyway.
Yikes, yeah.
But they get more satisfaction out of it.
Maybe they get more satisfaction out of it. Yeah.
And that's one of the friction points between cost and volatility and satisfaction, is that's what makes you leave. Is if the pressure and pain of the volatility outweighs the satisfaction you're getting from the experience, you're out. That's when you're like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Or like, I'm taking a break, or I walk away, or whatever it ends up being. And the lower the investment to return is for something like Kill Team, or like a new version of War Crouch, I'm hoping they do, or like a new board game, like a Cursed City. That's where you get this sort of like recurrence of like, no, I'll stick it out. It's not that bad.
Well, and Jay's made this point a bunch on our channel, and it's probably the least popular thing he's ever said.
Okay. that's and I can't wait to hear what this is.
I'll get your take on this too, because I think it's relevant to you as well. As we have a very strong belief that for the most part, the price doesn't matter to a large degree, because, and we always make the case of like, well, take Jay, for example, who gets Warhammer for cost. It doesn't matter how much he buys. He can only use a very small portion of it at any given time.
Yeah.
Like you said, completing that loop, right? So I think the argument there is that, like, in a lot of ways, like even with higher prices, if it just means people are basically getting a little bit less, but they're actually like doing more with it, is that a bad result necessarily, right? And look at yourself, like you can't get through the pile of stuff that you have.
No, never.
It's a never.
In the rest of my life.
But people dream about that, right? Having this like huge amount of miniatures, and it's like, that's not a...
I dream about having people come play with me and paint the models. Come, I will give you the miniatures. Please just come play with me. There's not enough of you left. You're all old and dying.
Yeah. But sometimes people are wishing for, like, I wish things were cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. It's like, I know you haven't finished everything you have. Like you're not finishing everything you have, right? So it's just about, like, I think we always preach on our channel just being more moderate in general and just trying to like enjoy what you buy, be sensible. And I think now's the time more than ever going forward where you probably have to be more like that if you can. Yeah.
Well, and that's an asset for guys like you and me. You've kind of found like where our satisfaction is in the Venn diagram, and we're not trying to overachieve anymore. We're not trying to impress anybody. We do it for our own satisfaction. Yeah. We play games at a size and a rate that we enjoy, and we engage with it to the amount that we enjoy it. And we don't try and go outside of that because there's nothing left to prove. You know what I mean? After this amount of time, what is there left to prove? And I think that becomes valuable during times like these where you can enjoy a moderate amount of stuff moderately. Mm-hmm. And then you get to ride out all the inconsistencies over time, because this has all happened before and it's all going to happen again. Yeah. Sadly, you and I have lived almost our entire lives during unprecedented times.
The curse of the millennial.
Our kids will never know
Yeah.
that the entire world used to smell like cigarette smoke.
Oh, man.
And you used to be able to walk your dad to the plane and just put him in the door. I remember in like the mid to late 80s taking my dad to the airport to fly to like Greenland or Russia or somewhere. And he's got a rifle rolled up in a sleeping bag to put in the overhead compartment because they just made him check his ammunition because he was going somewhere where he needed that for like bear defense or something.
Yeah.
And him just showing his pilot's license to the pilot and being like, can we take my son on board to look at the cockpit? And me just just walking onto the plane. I'm like 8 years old. I sit in there. Dad's talking to the pilots. He's like, because he's a pilot, he's talking to these people. And then me just walking back off again. I have a vivid memory of that while like 7 stewardesses smoked cigarettes around a giant like concrete ashtray full of white sand.
Oh, yeah.
And that's in my lifetime. And like I've lived in 7 other versions of reality since then. So this is why
our parents and grandparents, like their brains are broken by the time they hit like 89 years old. Because like, how could it not be?
Yeah, like I think about that. Like my grandmother. Changes. Yeah, my grandmother grew up without power. Yeah. She was like drinking well water. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my god. And then she's got a smartphone. She's playing Sudoku on. She's like, I don't know. This is all magic.
What galaxy am I in?
Yeah. It's all magic. I just want to die, please. This is too long. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to learn new things. So like knowing sort of like where you sit in relationship to your interests is probably going to be valuable going forward. And I do think that the customers will, the consumer base, or I shouldn't say the customers, because this is what this is, the consumer base in this industry will find all these hacks to make it continue to be viable for them. And we're going to see all kinds of weird bootlegging and sidestepping and markets emerge from it, because there's always money to be made by the bottom layer of stuff, which isn't even the normal like outlets for these things during that time.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. Well, we did another one. The timer went off.
It was another super positive video from Guerrilla Miniature Games.
Look, man, we're just Waldorf and Stadlering this whole thing. Man. We're just sitting in the corner, like throwing. I mean, what else can we do?
No,
we can't control any of this, right? We just live in it.
Yeah.
And I think both of us, the problem is that both of us are always rooting for everybody to win.
Yeah.
And we don't want anyone to lose. We want everyone to win. And the whole thing is just like, how can we conceptualize what the fuck is going on to try and make it make sense? Because almost none of it makes sense. So trying to make it make sense helps us both feel like we're a little less at sea, I guess, by ourselves. And the sailors aren't getting ready to turn on us. The mutiny isn't immediately happening. Like, we're still in the Navy, right? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because we're all starving to death on a desert island. So we're gonna do some garbage time with the patrons. If you are at GMG Patreon, you probably already know these are all filmed live with the patrons in the chat. And in between each of these, we do like an interstitial. We listen to their comments. We do like a chat. So there's additional bonus content behind the scenes. When we do these, we do them in a day. We'll do about 4 episodes usually. And we chat with everybody on the sides. If you want to check out Chris's Patreon, Loads of War Games and Hobbies, they do questionnaires. Basically, they get answered every now and again in your videos. You do like 2 or 3 videos a week.
Yep.
It's basically like the retail side of the tabletop wargaming industry, trying to give a unique view inside what the challenges are. Just running a business, like not the hobby side. Don't care about the rules. Don't care about the fine mechanics of like making the perfect game. But what is it like to actually be in the business of selling toy soldiers? It's super interesting. So thanks for coming in for this one.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for Ash.